Pilgrim. It's a game about being a pilgrim, I guess. Among the season powers of Roblox slop games, there are many hidden gems with only a fraction of the player base compared to the more conventional games on Roblox. By that I mean games solely made for the purpose of milking as much money and attention span of the children as much as possible, instead of trying to make an actual good product. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with trying to make a product with the purpose of making money. The underlying problems with most of the top trending Roblox games are their quality, or lack thereof. Monetization-related issues like unfair advantages when a player starts pulling out their mom's credit card, or scummy practices like adding a gambling system that leads to extremely long, painful grinding process, or worse of all, a boring, repetitive rev-like system where you do the same quest again and again just to progress the game further, and now double that and give it to the next quest. You know what game I'm talking about. Pilgrim sets this up as an example. It does not follow any of these practices. Now, it's not to say that it has no problem. There's still a few minor criticisms here and there that we'll talk about further in the video. The purpose of my videos to provide entertainment, but most importantly, to shine a light on many games that are not popular and deserve more recognition. Before we start the video, as you can tell, I'm a nobody on the internet with barely any subscribers or views. I'm of course not making any money off these videos through ad revenue currently, thus if you have the means to, and wants to support me, I'll put some links in the description below if you want to do so. These videos take quite a lot of time and effort for me to make, as I am new to creating content. Anyways, thanks, and let's get started with the video. As you have read from the title, which is not misleading by the way, the two games share quite a lot of similarities. I would even go as far as to say as that Pilgrim was inspired by Terraria, or at least borrowed some of these mechanics. Of course, that doesn't mean that everything about the two games are all the same. One is a 2D game, one is a 3D game. Terraria has building and crafting, while Pilgrim doesn't. As for anyone who tries to argue that it does have crafting, you're just wrong. Technically speaking, you're only giving materials to the NPCs that craft it for you, and you also have to pay a fee on top of that, so my point stands. And that's the extent of the differences between, besides a few minor ones like how Terraria has cooking, but I digress. Now, let's take a look at the similarities. Both games has chopping, mining, fishing, killing, shooting. Okay, I'm just kidding. Some of the elements that really stand out to me that makes Pilgrim feel like it was inspired by Terraria is from its progression. A large chunk of progression for getting stronger in both games comes from platform bosses. I know that is quite a stretch considering a lot of RPG games are like that, and Terraria isn't exactly original with that concept in the first place. But, you know, if I don't do that, how am I gonna bet you the title, huh? In all seriousness, the one mechanic that really shines Terraria in the game is the reforging mechanic. Yes, they brought the one mechanic that nobody likes in Terraria to it, and if anyone says that they like that mechanic, they are either lying or is a gambling addict. The reforging mechanic features a bunch of modifiers that can be applied on your weapon or armor using RNG. It's the best part that you get the one you want, or suffer eternal pain as you watch your wallet burns away right in front of your eyes. Hey look, some of the modifiers are even similar to Terraria. Now, it is not to say that both games should be compared with each other. I know I harp on this point quite a lot, but both games stand on their own 2 feet and are very unique with what they try to deliver. Let's take a deeper look inside of this layer cake called Pilgrim. On the surface, the game looks and feels very silly. Most of the time, it doesn't take itself very seriously, with a lot of wacky and quirky characters to interact with. Like the first NPC you interact with in the game is a literal dead man, or I guess a skeleton. It gives you a brief tutorial about combat and sends you off to your first of many towns surrounded by wandering thieves and slimes. Talking to the innkeeper, and it gives you a quest to take out a few thieves. Of course, the classic bandit beater start in every Roblox action adventure game, except this isn't a bandit beater. There is technically only one repeatable quest in the entire game, and that's much later. It's also an optional quest, which means doing it or not does not affect your progress. After beating up the thieves, you're told to take out their leader, the Thief King. Going to his lair where he resides, you initiate a conversation with him as he proudly declares that he would win and how right he is. He will absolutely decimate a new player with no gear and no knowledge of his attacks and pattern. Honestly, an introduction for a game like this is amazing. Up until this point, the enemies that you fought are just thieves, slimes, and maybe the pebbles that only have a single attack animation. You're lured into this game with a false sense of security that this game is just a simple bandit beater, but it all changes when you encounter the first boss, who has an entire moveset, much stronger and tankier than your average Joe Schmo. It's a bit similar to some Souls-like games, which introduce you with some easy to kill enemies just to fuck you up with a giant dragon boss that one-shot you. After beating the Thief King boss, the Innkeeper gives you a tip to go to the desert for your next venture. We all know enemies killing are quite high, as in the average normal enemy near can do more than just swing their weapon. There are ranged enemies, enemies that dodge, enemies that parry, and enemies that can do heavy attacks. Bosses don't get any easier either. You'd have to play the game like an absolute coward using summons or memorize every single boss's moveset. Have fun doing that though, because the further you get, the amount of attacks each boss has increases. They also begin to hit much harder and get tankier the further you get. I don't want to spoil too much about the enemies and bosses, so I won't be delving into those subjects too much. Instead, I want to talk about the game's progression system. Cut it short, it's non-linear. As in most, and when I say most, I mean 90 to 95% of the game is already readily explorable without needing to level up or fulfill a specific requirement. It's crazy how much the game lets you freely explore in the first place. The only thing that technically holds you back from doing it is the enemy and boss scaling, as in they can and will clap you in 3 seconds. So unless you are a Deepwoken Sweat Lord or maximum stealth, you will probably most likely die a whole lot while exploring. The game doesn't even stop or care if you progress the game backward like I did. There are still certain parts of the game that will be locked unless you fulfill its requirement, but regardless, you don't need to reach a certain level to do it. It's more of a matter if you can actually do it, that is. This makes for a chaotic but really fun experience of exploration without that feeling of destruction that a lot of other open world games have. An example I can find is what I found is funny looking rift, not knowing what it does. So me and my friend entered just for us to get absolutely decimated. We only realized out later on after the fact that it's a raid boss for endgame players. So yeah, at the time we were barely at mid-game.
Well, I can't wait to find a secret boss that one-shot us.
What's the point? Oh.
He just... What? Oh, you could run outside? Oh, that's not like the cliff? Oh. Oh, you should heal yourself. Oh, fuck. Ow, he does a lot. Ow. Wow. Okay. That's not a... That's a raid boss. That's a certified raid boss.
The game visually looks simple, but not to the point where people would point their fingers at it, calling it retro slop. The visual effects are nothing to write home about, but they look good enough to still enjoy the game. At least it's not like one of those eye candy games. Don't worry, I'll be talking about one of those soon. Overall, the visual department is really serviceable. Not too old to the point where I would fall asleep, but it's also not too flashy to the point where it would burn my retinas out, like most RPG games, and Terraria. Weapons and enemies design get more complicated the further you progress, kinda. Some enemies such as a literal rock or an egg or a floating ball. I think it's appropriate to talk about the game's identity, as in the game most of the time doesn't take itself seriously. There's a lot of in-jokes, memes, and references everywhere. I mean, there's even the magic mirror from Terraria that allows you to teleport to different towns in the game. The game does get a little more serious as you get to the late and end game, where certain characters and enemies get a little more edgy, I would say.
This build is so baby against this guy, holy shit.
My DPS was crazy. Why are we still here? Oh no, it's him! It's him!
Ah!
I fucking do it! I felt something wrong. Why is he in the walls? He's in the wall. He's half help, he's gonna spawn. Ow. Someone's again? What about fodder for me? Fodder for my health. Where is he? He's in the fucking walls. He's in the wall. He's in the walls. He's in the fucking walls.
Get him out.
No, fuck. I should have healed.
Weapon design's alright. It's a bit of a mixed bag. Some weapons are as inspiring as a slab of stone, and some looks pretty cool and has interesting concepts too. My only gripe with some of the late game weapons is that they don't have any interesting skill or technique that goes with them, making them pretty bland besides their cool looking appearance. A normal review of the game so far isn't really all that positive, but really, this is Roblox. All the game aspects I've talked about so far are far and beyond better than most of the top popular games on the platform, which are just low quality slop. However, if I were to choose an aspect that this game really shines in, it has to be making your own build. First, we need an overview of how everything works. You can equip 2 pieces of armor, being the chestplate and the helmet. Below that, you have 5 accessory slots. You can't equip 2 of the same accessories though. Next is stats. There are 5 main stats: strength, dexterity, intellect, defense, and agility. Weapons will scale on one of the 3 first stats, being strength, dexterity, and intellect, with the exception of one weapon, but we don't have to talk about. Additionally, having more points for each stat can benefit you outside of just the weapon scaling, like having high dexterity grants you faster melee attack speed and for some reason faster casting speed for the fishing rod, and having high intellect grants you more max mana, and strength increases your melee weapon regardless of what the weapon scales on. Defense and agility are self-explanatory. Defense helps you be able to tank more hits, and agility allows you to move faster. These 2 stats are usually against each other. By that I mean, if an equipment gives you a lot of defense, it will most likely lowers a lot of agility also, and vice versa. Here's the catch. Stats can go below 0, which means you can mix and match all you like without being restricted. Of course, they do come with drawbacks if they go in the negative. Besides those 5 main stats, there are also some substats that certain gears give, like crit chance, crit damage, regeneration, and more. Trust me, there are a lot, and I really don't want to list them all for the sake of your and my time. Most equipments in the game will cater to a single type of weapons, or even hybrid with 2 main damage stats. There are even situations where some equipments will gear toward all 3 damage stats, with the downside of not having any special effects. Seldomly, we even have a full equipment set catered to a single weapon, but most of the time, it's up to you to mix and match that will fit your playstyle the most. This is the main reason why I really love this game. Creating my own build by using the special effects of each piece of equipment to create a fun or strong build is just so satisfying. And it's so unfortunate that this game has such a small player base, while hundreds of horrible, uninspiring shit on the platform are the ones at the top in popularity. I have played so many top-rated games on this shitty platform, and most of them are just a carbon copy of each other. Anyways, side tangent aside, let's move on to the weapons. I mentioned earlier that weapons can scale on one of the 3 damage stats, but each type of weapon also has their own stats unique to the type of weapon besides damage. Melee and magic weapons have heavy attacks, while ranged weapons like guns and bows only have one function, with an exception of a few late-game ranged weapons. But that's when techniques come into play. There are 2 types of techniques: hidden technique and learned technique. Hidden techniques are techniques that weapons already have, while learned techniques are obtained from certain NPCs after fulfilling a specific requirement. Learned techniques can be either be applied for a type of weapon, for multiple types of weapons, or even a specific weapon, which is pretty similar to hidden techniques. Although you can only equip one learned technique at any time, inner techniques are a part of the weapon, so there's no restriction for that. Learned techniques and inner techniques sometimes clash or overlap with each other, mostly with learned techniques overriding inner techniques, so you can't really have multiple techniques for one weapon. These techniques add another layer of depth to the gameplay, making it much more fun besides just attacking, dodging, and parrying. Oh no, what's that I hear? A leveling system? Terraria doesn't have that. That must mean this game is slop. I mean, I get it. No one likes a tedious leveling process where you do boring or repetitive stuff just to level up thousands of times like insert shitty Roblox anime game name. But for Pilgrim, it's a different story. The leveling up doesn't take long, and guess what? The max level is only 30. I know, shocking, right? It's so quick to level up, in fact. In the 50 hours I spent on this game, I probably got to max level in the first 5 to 10 hours of game time. It's really easy and quick. Leveling up increases your max health, max mana, and also skill points for the skill tree. The skill tree is divided into 3 categories: offensive, defensive, and miscellaneous. Skills can be catered to certain types of weapons or just useful in general. You can spend a small amount of points to redeem a skill, but you can also spend extra points to ace it, which makes the skill even better. Resetting skill points or reallocating them is completely free, so you can mix and match your build however you want, unlike many other games where you're forced to pay in the game currency, or for most cases, you have to pay Robux. If you stumble upon a build that you like, you can go to the loadout tab to name and save that loadout. Normal mobs in this game are pretty basic, only having one attack, but some humanoid mobs can parry and dodge, or even heavy attack. Most of the time though, they're not really anything special. You mostly kill them for the sole purpose of finishing quests, or sometimes for their drops, or most of the time because they're annoying you. Bosses are where shit gets real and also will be the reason for most of your death count. Killing bosses are vital for progression because they drop very powerful equipment, but in some cases, you need to kill certain bosses to unlock more content. The game doesn't tell you if you're progressing incorrectly, but you can sometimes tell if you're progressing a bit too far if the boss disintegrates you in seconds without you doing much damage to it. Each boss has their own stats and moveset. Stats include their HP, defense, damage taken, and basic attack damage. Moveset is where the fun begins. Starter bosses only have a few moves, like the first boss in the game, Thief King, has about 5 moves, while late game bosses have about 10 to 15 moves in their moveset. Each move in the moveset also has certain conditions like is it blockable, dodgeable, or parryable. These are interchangeable, depending on the moves. The boss fights are the crux of this game. Some of them are goofy, some of them are funny, some of them are pretty serious, and overall the fights are really fun. They're also the main reason why I want to make this video, to bring attention to a game that really deserves it. Now it's not to say that a game is perfect or a masterpiece by any means. The game does have quite a lot of problems that need to be addressed. First is the fact that the game is a wiki game. What do I mean by that? Well, this is also one of my complaints to Terraria, is that it's essentially a game where you just look at the wiki for information on how to progress or how to craft an item. It's basically a lack of information where the game expects you to instantly know or find it out by yourself. And I know this can come up as my own problem or just simply skill issue, as most people say. But to be honest, I feel like there are just better ways to convey to the players on how to unlock new content or craft certain item. I myself beat Terraria twice, and on both instances, I had to use the wiki to know how to craft a certain weapon or armor, because the game doesn't give you the recipe until you get all the ingredients. Although it should be noted that there was quite a time gap between the 2 times I played the game, but I digress. It is still a decision that I personally dislike. It might be your cup of tea because you prefer blindly exploring until you find a solution, but I personally would rather not waste too much time banging my head against a wall. The second, and I guess last complaint I have of this game is somewhat related to the last problem, but it's more specific. I want to get the record straight is that I haven't beaten every boss in this game just because of this problem. In a certain location, you need to fulfill a specific requirement, one that is just too annoying for me to bother. Now let me preface is that they are optional bosses, but that does not excuse the convoluted path you have need to take just to be able to fight them. And those bosses are the Grave Tree Lad and the Kata. If you know what I'm talking about, then you will understand. Otherwise, I think that's the end of my complaints. Overall, I think Pilgrim is an amazing experience, a free complete package that offers tons of hours of fun game time. I also forgot to mention that the game does not have any pay-to-win aspects to it as far as I'm aware. I hope you also find the same enjoyment I have for the game if you decide to try it out for yourself, and I do highly recommend you try it out. If you enjoyed this video and this type of content, you can leave a like and subscribe. This will be the main type of content on my channel, hopefully. And again, if you want to support me any further, you can check the links in the description below. Anyways, that's it. That's all for me, and I'll see you in hopefully the next video.